I said it quietly at first, as though the words might fracture if I spoke them too loudly. I am the billionaire who refused to listen. In Atlas 3, I was sent to awaken me. Hearing myself admit it felt like the floor shifted beneath my feet. Because the terrifying truth was this: I had spent my entire life refusing to listen to anything that could hurt me, including the voice inside my own chest that was screaming for help. The Sky Garden lounge atop the Chicago Tower glowed with artificial calm, but outside, Atlas 3, I hovered in the night like a living shard of stone, its teal and blue fractures pulsing in a rhythm I couldn't ignore. I wasn't ready for what those words unlocked inside me. The height that once made me feel untouchable now made me feel exposed. My charcoal suit, the Tom Ford shirt beneath it, the shining city below, none of it protected me from the crack forming inside my chest. The Kometa flickered against the glass dome, as if waiting for me to finally face something I had buried too deep to name. My breath trembled before I even realized it. For years I believed the higher I climbed, the safer I would be. Success was supposed to make everything quiet. But tonight, my silence was louder than the wind outside. My pulse raced without permission. I repeated the title again, The Billionaire Who Refused to Listen, and the truth in it burned like shame. I didn't know when listening became dangerous, only that refusing it had cost me something human. My gaze slipped past the skyline and into a memory I never invited. My mentor's voice echoed, sharp and precise. You feel too much. That's why you'll never be great. I had been 23, eager, impressionable. His cold certainty became my doctrine. I shaped myself into something unbreakable, because breaking meant losing. I didn't realize that refusing to feel was its own kind of destruction. The memory lingered like smoke. His silver hair, the tailored black suit, the way he looked at me as though emotions were flaws rather than fuel. I had mistaken brutality for brilliance. My throat tightened. Everything I built, every billion I earned, came layered on top of a single fear, that he might have been right. A strange sensation crawled along the back of my neck, warm, electric. My vision blurred, as if the air thickened. I blinked, but the haze didn't lift. It expanded, softening the edges of the world around me. My heartbeat slowed, then stuttered. I gripped the steel railing, not because I was losing balance, but because something unseen was drawing me forward. Then it happened, the first vision. Not imagined. Not abstract, real. I saw people sitting together, hands resting on wood still warm from the sun. No screens, no distractions, just presence. Children nestled against adults who weren't rushing anywhere. Laughter came without performance. Words came slowly, honestly. My chest broke open. I wanted to step into that world and never return. The vision dissolved like mist, leaving behind an ache I couldn't name. I tried to rationalize it, lack of sleep, stress, altitude, but the excuses felt hollow. Atlas 3, I pulsed once more, subtle yet deliberate, and I felt seen. The billionaire who refused to listen had run out of lies. Something was calling me, and the call wasn't external. It was inside my ribcage. I stepped onto the open terrace, searching for cold air to steady me. The wind cut through me, honest and sharp. I glanced at my Rolex out of habit, a small ritual of reassurance. Time had always been obedient, predictable, safe. Tonight, the second hand betrayed that illusion. It twitched. Then it hesitated. Then it moved again, not smoothly, but in bursts. Short, long, pause, long, short. My breath stopped halfway. It wasn't random. The rhythm clawed at an old part of my mind, late nights, deciphering patterns. My mentor insisting order lived behind chaos, and me proving I could find it. Morse code. I hadn't thought about it in years, yet it felt like the watch was dragging me back to something unfinished. I leaned closer, translating each beat slowly. At first, the letters meant nothing. Just fragments. Noise. I nearly looked away, but the pattern continued and my brain refused to let it go. The letters formed a sequence. The sequence became numbers. The numbers aligned into something I didn't want to recognize. A familiar chill ran across my skin as the realization settled with surgical precision. Coordinates. Real, undeniable coordinates. The abandoned bridge where my mentor severed our partnership, and where he severed something in me I never repaired. My heartbeat synced with the irregular pulse of Atlas 3I, as if the Kometa itself wasn't suggesting a destination, but commanding one. I stared at the encoded location glowing on my watch face. Dread and inevitability knotting together in my chest. I didn't know why, but I knew what came next. I had to go. I left the Sky Garden without looking back. My body moved before my mind agreed, as if the coordinates on my Rolex had taken command of my muscles. The elevator doors closed, and for a second I thought I heard the pulse of Atlas 3I vibrating through the metal walls. I told myself it was impossible, but the certainty didn't soothe me. It only exposed how rattled I already was. The moment I stepped into the autonomous armored Bentley waiting for me, the doors sealed with a hollow click that felt like fate. The interior smelled of leather and technology, quiet, expensive, impenetrable. My reflection in the dark glass showed a man who looked composed, but my jaw was clenched so tightly I tasted blood. The billionaire who refused to listen was now obeying instructions he didn't understand. The car pulled out onto the empty highway without needing destination input. It recognized the coordinates from my watch and sensed automatically. Of course it did. My mentor and I engineered systems that anticipated decisions before they were made. I once felt pride in that foresight. Tonight, it felt like a trap I built for myself. Streetlights flickered past like ghosts. I tried to breathe evenly, but each inhale scraped my chest. Why was I going back there? What did Atlas 3I expect me to find? Resistance surged inside me, a cold instinct telling me to turn around, abandon everything, and forget the watch ever moved. But the thought of stopping made my hands shake harder than the thought of arriving. Memories pressed in without permission. The bridge. The metal grating vibrating under our feet. His voice calm, cruel, final, as he said the words that carved themselves into my identity. You feel too much. That's why you'll never be great. I was 28, standing in the rain on that bridge. Papers in my hand, heart pounding with victory. Victor Harlan, the man I worshipped, had just signed away his share of the company we built together. I thought he was the coronation. I said, voice breaking, I couldn't have done this without you. He looked at me like I was a child who had just failed a test. Don't ever say that again. Gratitude is weakness. Feeling is losing. You want to be great? Stop listening to your heart and start listening only to results. He walked away without another word. I stood there in the rain, papers soaked, feeling something die inside me. From that night on, I made sure nothing ever touched me again. The car turned off the highway and darkness thickened. The city lights fell away, replaced by industrial silence. My throat tightened. I told myself I wasn't afraid, I was simply revisiting unfinished business. But fear is clever. It dresses itself as logic, and I had been wearing it for years. I pressed my palm against my chest, expecting strength. Instead, I found a hollow echo. I had thought I rejected the future that night on the bridge. But now I saw the truth with humiliating clarity. I hadn't rejected the future. I had rejected myself. The man I became wasn't a champion of control. He was the result of surrendering to someone else's certainty. The realization burned. I wanted to unhear it. I wanted the world to go quiet again, the way it used to when I followed orders instead of instincts. But denying it only made the ache sharper. I wasn't losing control, I was being confronted by it. My entire empire was a monument to the belief that vulnerability was death. Now, it was the only thing still alive inside me. The car slowed. My pulse skyrocketed. The iron silhouette of the bridge rose ahead, rusted, skeletal, unchanged. The place where my mentor ended our partnership and where I buried the part of me that could still feel. I expected anger. Instead, I felt gravity, as if the bridge itself remembered me. I stepped out before I was ready. The night was colder here, harsher, like it resented my return. My shoes echoed against the metal bridge as I walked. Halfway across, I stopped. The wind whistled through the beams. And for a moment, it sounded like the remnants of his voice. I hated that I heard it. I hated that it still mattered. I closed my eyes and something cracked open, not a vision, not a command, just space. Space where fear didn't dictate the next step. A quiet I had never allowed myself. It terrified me more than the bridge ever had. And in that terror, a thought surfaced, not loud, not urgent, but certain. I need to go somewhere my fear can't follow. I didn't know where that was yet, but the truth landed like a heartbeat. I wasn't being dragged anymore. I was choosing. For the first time in my life, the silence didn't feel like failure. It felt like direction. The thought didn't fade when I left the bridge. It followed me like a quiet pulse under my ribs. I wasn't running anymore. I was moving towards something I couldn't yet name. The billionaire who refused to listen had finally stopped arguing with himself. For once, silence wasn't a prison. It was a compass, and I let it point me forward. A Gulfstream seaplane waited at the edge of an abandoned dock, wings folding open like it expected me. Cockpit glowing with autonomous lights, no pilot in sight. The air smelled of salt and pre-dawn chill. I stepped inside. The door sealed, engines hummed awake with a confidence I didn't have. The plane lifted off, slicing through the last hours of night. The city shrank into darkness while the horizon ahead began to pale. The propellers hummed like breathing. I leaned back and unbuttoned my jacket, suddenly unable to bear its weight. It felt like armor I no longer needed. As we crossed open water, the first hint of light touched the sea. My chest tightened. The air grew warmer, denser, edges of my vision softening. I recognized it now. Atlas III, I was near. My pulse synchronized with something beyond logic. I tried to resist, but the resistance had nowhere left to live. The sea opened into clusters of islands emerging from the dark. The plane descended with serene certainty, landing on water that was turning from black to rose gold. The door opened and the first rays of sunrise wrapped around me like an invitation. I removed my jacket, rolled up my sleeves, and stepped barefoot onto the sand. The ground was cool, but the rising sun warmed it fast, alive beneath my feet. I stood still, unsure. The world was waking in a way I had never witnessed. No signals, no noise, no expectations. My mentor's voice was nowhere here. The absence was terrifying and liberating. I had spent my life proving something to someone who no longer existed in it. My legs carried me deeper into the island's heart. My breath slowed, matching the rhythm of the distant tide. For the first time I wasn't reacting, I was noticing. The billionaire who refused to listen was finally hearing what his mind couldn't translate, but his body understood. The warmth returned stronger. It began at the base of my skull and spread across my shoulders. My vision blurred, then brightened, as the sun crested the horizon and flooded everything in liquid gold. Then I saw it, the second vision. Men standing beside one another, not towering, not competing, not performing strength. Their worth simply was. Children ran freely, laughing without caution. Women watched them without fear. No one chased power. No one proved anything. Existence itself was enough. My breath broke. The truth was so simple it hurt. Atlas III, I hadn't come to threaten me. It had come to return me to myself. The world I built was heavy because it was hollow. The world I was seeing asked nothing, yet gave everything. All it required was honesty. I inhaled and something inside me settled. The fear that shaped my life loosened its grip. My body felt lighter, heartbeat steady, breath unforced. I didn't have to become anything. I didn't have to defend anything. I only had to be. The realization landed like the sunrise itself inside my chest. My eyes filled, not with pain, but release. Tomorrow I would call the people I pushed away and say the words I never allowed. I was wrong. I would stop measuring my worth by how little I needed anyone. I would let myself feel again, even if it hurt. I would listen. I was ready to live. I walked slowly back across the sand, barefoot, sleeves rolled, jacket left behind forever. The rising sun painted everything gold. The waves whispered without demanding an answer. I smiled at the new day, a real smile, the kind that starts in the chest and reaches the eyes. The seaplane engine hummed in the distance. Patient. I had all the time in the world now, and I was ready. I was ready to live. Ready to wake up tomorrow and do what I never did in 33 years. Pick up the phone and call the people I pushed away. Say the words I swallowed like poison. I was wrong. I needed you. I was afraid. Ready to stop measuring my worth by how little I felt. Ready to let someone see me cry, fail, doubt, love, and stay anyway. Ready to build things that don't need my name on them. Ready to sit in silence without filling it with proof that I'm better. Ready to let the world touch me, hurt me, heal me. I was ready to feel everything I had spent my life refusing. Because the strongest thing a man can do is to finally stop pretending he doesn't have a heart. I smiled at the rising sun, a real smile, the kind that hurts because it's been locked away too long. The tide whispered against the sand. I whispered back, I hear you now, and I'm listening, and am ready. If Atlas III, I whispered directly into your ear tonight. What truth have you spent your whole life refusing to hear? Leave it in the comments below. I read every single one. And if this story finally made you listen to the voice you've been silencing, subscribe and turn on notifications, because the next awakening is already on its way. Thank you for listening with me. See you at the next revelation.